Okay, welcome to this session number 82 of SQVe Structural Summit, wherein we are going to talk about maritime structures and with a special focus on the career path for the structural engineers. Right, so we floated this event in the social media and we have received very good responses. And there are many interesting questions we have received. So today we'll be having Mr. Mathew Simon with us. And he'll be talking about this very niche area, right? So before we start getting into this subject, I would like to request him to talk a little bit about his career progression in this very niche area, which is maritime structures, right? So over to you, Mathew ji.
Thank you, firstly, Bhavin, for inviting me and hosting me on this SQVe platform.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to share my experiences. To talk about myself, I graduated in civil engineering in 1988. And the initial 4 to 5 years of my career, I was doing onshore industrial structures. And post that, I joined Engineers India Limited, EIL, in New Delhi. So that was my first introduction to maritime structures. And fortunately, the department configuration there was the single department was handling both maritime structures as well as offshore structures. So I got exposure to both, over a course of 20 years of my stay there. Post that, I moved to Singapore to some MNCs. I took up leadership positions there. I was there for 4 to 5 years, and then I moved to Indonesia, where also we had a combination of onshore and offshore departments. I was heading both. And post the pandemic, I returned back to India and I was working briefly in Bangalore. So now I'm currently based in Delhi with my family.
Yeah, great. Okay. So when we floated this event and registration form in the social media, we received very interesting questions. And of course, the first question comes out is what is the difference between the this maritime structures and the offshore structures? I think that was, typical kind of a confusion which we could see.
Okay, that's quite a common confusion which people have. And I just broadly say that maritime structures are facilities for handling ships and vessels, which are located at the shore or near the shore. And in some way, they are connected to the shore. Okay. Whereas an offshore structure is far out into the sea. So if you're an offshore structure, there is hardly any chance that you'll be able to see the shore or the land. Okay, so that's the real offshore.
Yeah.
Or if it's a maritime structure, you definitely are very close to shore, but it still has the environment of the ocean affecting that structure. So I would say this is a transition point between the onshore structures and the offshore structures, in the sense that onshore structures are fully on land, whereas the maritime is lying on the coast or very near the coast, but connected to the coast physically.
Right.
And you have the offshore, which is in the deep ocean. Right. So these categories are maritime and offshore are strictly different. Though they may have some common areas. Say, for example, you do have a special class of structures called offshore marine terminals, where the function is very similar to a maritime structure, but the construction methodology, the design codes, everything will be under similar to the offshore structures.
Yes.
But those projects are very few and special. But broadly, it's a classification which I told you earlier.
Right. Yeah, so there are many questions which we receive related to design of maritime structures, even for the design of offshore structures. And that's what we are thinking right now, as we just discussed, that we will plan to launch paid online courses on this niche area, starting with on the maritime structures, based on the responses, whatever we receive from the audience, right? I think that would be the better option for the questions whichever we have received related to design, right?
Right. So across these 30 years of my career, what I found that from an Indian perspective, noting that most of our respondents are from India, We do have respondents from abroad also. But in India, typically we have a situation where maritime structures and offshore structures both are taught in very limited universities in
Right.
India. And that too mostly at the master's level. So what we have on the workforce, more than 90 to 95% of the engineers are converted from traditional structural engineering through on-the-job training. So it depends company to company whether they have an internal training session or people are studying and reading on their own. But definitely there is a case for providing structured training so that people can go into depth in their own time and deliver better on the projects which
Right.
they are doing in the office.
Right.
So as you just mentioned, we have, of course, depending on the response which we get, which is so far encouraging for the first session, we would go deep into a structured training session over 10 to 12, core sessions and additional interaction sessions. So maybe 25 to 30 sessions where we would be able to cover the entire maritime structures.
Great. Great. Yeah. So let us focus this session on the questions specifically related to career path. There are multiple questions.
Right.
So let me pick up, of course, few questions which we decided, before launching this event. Let us take up those questions, and then we will get into the queries or questions which we have received through the participants through the registration form.
Right.
Right. So the first question is, what are the structures included in the maritime structures? Maritime sector. Yeah.
Maritime structures. So you have a lot of terminology which people may have otherwise read in the media and all, but not probably recognize them as maritime structures.
Okay.
So you could have berths, docks, wharf, jetties. These are all types of maritime structures.
Yeah.
Even a breakwater, which is designed, barrier to prevent the sea from, having a heavy influence on the port. That is also a structure, though it may not be concrete or steel. It is made of rubble and concrete, and sometimes we cast what are called as tetrapods. Those who have gone to Bombay know that on the shoreline. So it is having a concrete armor block with 3 arms. So those are called tetrapods. Even that is a maritime structure, strictly speaking. So there are different types of maritime structures, but the basic function of all of them is to handle vessels, and specifically vessel cargo. So either you can be unloading something from the vessel onto the marine facility, or you could be loading something for export. It works both ways. So principal function of marine facility is to interface with the vessel.
Yeah. So is design of ship also included in the maritime sector?
No, that is again another confusion which some people have, that when we talk of ship and the ocean, generally the term marine is used. And for structures, we generally use maritime.
Right.
There's a subtle difference, and a lot of people interchange the terminology. But to answer your question, design of ship is not covered under maritime structures because this normally comes under the purview of a naval architect.
Okay.
Naval architect during his education is fully taught how to design a ship. There are structural components, obviously steel, girders, deck plating, hull. All these require structural checks. But normally this comes under the purview of naval architect.
Right. Right. Next common question we have, like, what are the skills which young engineers require if they want to develop a successful career in the maritime structural design?
Well, one of the fundamental differences is, like, most of the engineers who are working on onshore, so they are familiar with the loading, the dead load, live load, earthquake, wind, etc. But the moment you talk of maritime, there is one additional force of nature which you have to contend with. That is the marine environment.
Right.
So again, as I said earlier, we are not taught about this subject in college. Most of us, we stop at the earlier named, loading classifications. So we are forced to learn another new entity. So it depends how soon the person acclimatizes and starts thinking in that, frame of mind. So while certain principles of structural design remain the same, all the bending moment, shear forces, deflection, everything remains the same. But you need more attention to the fact that you are in a marine environment, be it design, be it choice of construction material, be it choice of detailing. So that's the skill gap or experience gap one has to cross. And secondly, one has to be in an environment in which such projects are being done. So if somebody is in a organization which does purely buildings, then he will not have that opportunity unless he makes a strategic career move into an organization which maybe he can, on the strength of his building design experience, he can get into that company, but he should strategically see that company also does maritime structures if that area interests him, and then look for a lateral movement once he's inside that company. So again, the choice of companies will be very narrow. So if you have got, say, 1,000 companies doing onshore work, you may only have around 30 or 40 doing maritime work. I'm talking about India. The ratios may be different abroad. So one has to, choosing a career path, if this interests you, then you have to align your career path and selection of your employer to suit, to give yourself an opportunity to work in that environment.
Yes.
Yeah. Otherwise, what you learn will quickly evaporate.
Right.
If you do not implement it from day to day.
Yes, yes. So, what are the specific software or tools which will require or in which engineers must be proficient if they want to work into the maritime structural design?
Well, actually, knowledge of the standard software like Stat Pro and some people use SAP, this is quite sufficient to start with. To start with, it's quite sufficient. Some of these softwares are able to generate hydrodynamic loading as well. But sometimes the industry has issues with accepting that the loading calculations are correct or not. But by and large, these two software is good enough. And if you are lucky to be in a company where they are also doing offshore work, then most of the companies are using SACs.
Yes.
Now, SACs can also be used for marine structures design. Okay. But there's a catch there. The SACs is oriented towards steel design. So while you can model the hydrodynamic loading and everything very nicely, but if you are having any concrete elements, you may end up using a spreadsheet or some manual methods to do the concrete part. But the hydrodynamic load will be much more efficient in SACs. So it all depends on the scale of the company which you are joining or where you're working at the moment. But to start with, SAP and Stat Pro are good enough.
Right. I think already you touched a little bit upon this, but how does the maritime structure or sector differ from the onshore structural design in terms of the professional expertise required?
Well, the order of magnitude of loading goes up several times.
Right.
So just to give you a broad example, if in an onshore building, you are thinking of a beam size typically. So you may be thinking of, say, 250 mm by 500 or 600 mm. But when you jump to maritime, suddenly it will be scaled up to maybe 1000 mm by 1500 mm.
Yeah.
And there will be a lot of crowding of reinforcement. It will be a challenge to detail the junctions because there are a lot of rebars coming out and a heavy use of precast concrete.
Yes.
One of the differences which people should understand is, like in a traditional building construction, we have formwork, right? And then we use props to say, for example, a slab, you are casting the slab and you have prop from below. After X number of days, you can remove the formwork and the prop. But where will you have a prop or a formwork removable type in the sea? You can't. Yes. So one has to innovate by using a combination of cast in situ and precast.
Right.
Concrete. So that is how one has to slightly shift the thinking style towards maritime. There are, a lot of the changes will come out when we actually do the course. But broadly speaking, the scale of the structure, scale of loading, construction methodology, these are all quite different.
right? And there is quite aggressive environment, right, in which we are putting the
Yes,
concrete.
and we have to deal with corrosion. We have to detail in a way in which the maintenance cost is low. And for example, if you go to industrial structure onshore, people use channels, angle sections, etc. So normally when you go to offshore, this is replaced by hollow tubes, circular tubes, or square hollow sections or rectangular hollow section. The reason being that in an angle, structural angle, the corrosion will act from both sides.
Yes.
Whereas if you are having a hollow section, the corrosion will act only from inside because outside, sorry, the inside, the air being dead, there will be no corrosion. So these are some of the changes which one has to, it doesn't happen overnight, but some of the changes will grow on you as you get more and more involved.
So what is the demand for maritime structural designers within India and across, or let's say we can say outside India also?
Well, as you know, the development of ports has been taken up by the government in a very serious manner. And clean energy in the form of LNG is also becoming extremely popular. So the demand for such engineers is higher than what it was 10 years ago, definitely. So, and then we do not have the trained manpower to really, people have to learn on the job.
Yes.
Okay. Because of the fact that there are no institutions, not many, maybe single digit number of institutions who are teaching.
Right.
So what happens is there is a shortage of people. And if the skill is rare, naturally the compensation bracket is higher.
Yes.
Okay. But then the con of that is that the number of companies involved in this will be a creamy layer, top few companies. So in onshore, you may get many more prospective employers. But if you want to increase the compensation, because I know the young engineers always look to that, then you are targeting maybe around 20 to 30 companies who are in this business. There may be many companies who are doing infrastructure, but not necessarily maritime.
Yeah.
But a lot of the European companies have set up office in India.
Okay.
Okay. And they are not doing just infrastructure, they're also doing maritime infrastructure. But most of them, to my knowledge, are clustered in Mumbai and southern side, like Bengaluru and Chennai, Hyderabad also. But not so much in the north. This is my, to the best of my knowledge. Yeah. But European companies have made India the, low-cost engineering center in a way. So almost every single company, high-level company has opened an office in Chennai or Bengaluru. So, and a lot of them are in the maritime business. Yes. And offshore also.
Yes. So what are some common misconceptions about maritime structural design?
So the common conception, I think misconceptions we touched upon. One is the general confusion that there is no difference between offshore and maritime. I think I've tried to clear it earlier in the session. And then there is one more misconception that, when the young engineers write an exam and suddenly a question comes which they do not expect or they do not prepare for. So they say this is out of syllabus. Okay. So when they first hear of maritime, they say, oh, we have never had any, academic background in this, never did a single thing. I don't think it's really, we should be exploring. But it's the braver ones or who actually have a thirst for knowledge, who open and embrace that challenge. And they will find it very enjoyable, I'll say. That you have it's a real fusion of onshore and offshore when you talk of maritime structures. So both the skills are required to be merged into becoming a good maritime structure.
Okay. Now, how does one transition from a conventional structural engineering background into maritime sector? So let's say a certain year, somebody has worked into the conventional structures, and now he or she wishes to migrate into the, or let's say want to switch off the career into the maritime structures. So what could be a career path, or what should be guidelines for them, right?
I think the first part is to understand that whatever time you have spent in the onshore is not a waste.
Mm.
Whatever skills you have developed during those 5 years, you will be building on that skill. It is not that you have to leave that aside and you have to start afresh. You have to, that will be the core and you are building on top of that. So it's
Right.
not a wasted exercise. So
Mm.
people need not think that I've already worked 5 years in the onshore, it's too late, or that kind of thing. Because
Mm.
this transition keeps on happening more often than people think
Yes.
because of the necessity.
Yes.
Because you cannot get a ready-made marine structural engineer coming out of a master's degree program unless that person is coming from those specific institutes.
Mm.
So you have to train them. If the companies have a rigorous training program, yes, they are lucky. They can be part of that. Or else they can look to programs which similar to what we are conceiving,
Right.
that they get a broad idea. But at the end of the day, they have to position themselves and align their career path and try to join a company where this business is being done, if this interests them.
Mm.
That strategic planning is a very individual thing. Depends on the person's individual position. Maybe sometimes they don't want to leave their hometown, that kind of thing. So one has to be a little bolder and try to head out.
Right. Right. Can you give some quick examples of exciting or projects in the maritime structural design, just for benefit of the audience?
Okay, so in India, we have had these traditional boats and marine. Normally in the government sector, you have the major ports and minor ports all along the west and east coastline. But during the late 90s and early 2000s, there was a trend to start captive marine terminals. By captive, we mean dedicated for that single user. And it need not be in the shelter area of a port. So the economics dictate the location of such facilities. So for example, one very interesting project we were involved is in a location called Dahej in Gujarat.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dahej is one of the roughest maritime locations in the world. It has got most challenging. It has got around 10 meters of tidal variation, which is second only to the Bay of Fundy in Canada. So it's second in the world. So what it means is your high tide in the same day would be 10 meters higher than what you experience at some other time of the day. So your structures are necessarily taller because they have to be above the high water line.
Right.
And when you construct, all the construction personnel have to come back to shore before the tide rises.
Yes.
And you have strong currents which are even comparable to the ocean. Okay. And you have a huge scouring. Scouring means your ground level was, say, at minus 15 meters one day. And a month later, it has become suddenly minus 20. Because the strong currents have taken out the mud and deposited somewhere else, downstream or upstream, depending on the direction. So what you are left with, what you thought you had resistance, soil resistance for a good 5 meters below the seabed, suddenly it has vanished. So all these factors need to be properly catered to in the design. So the first open sea jetty in India was built in Dahej, and the trestle is almost 2.4 kilometers long. So this entire jetty has no protection like that. What you see in a harbor. Harbor will be having calm water because the breakwater is stopping the waves from coming in. So you have sheltered, calm water for the ships to berth and move. Whereas here, you don't have a port nearby. So your logistics is dictated by your plant location. Once your plant area land is located, you want the marine facility as close as possible. The penalty you pay is that the structure will be heavily designed because it's exposed. So it will be much more heavier than having it in a sheltered port. But you save in the pipeline cost. Otherwise, you go to several 100 kilometers away to a port and you have to bring the pipeline to your plant. So these are so Dahej particularly was very challenging. We did one open sea jetty for Gujarat Chemical Port Terminal in 1998, followed by Petronet's LNG terminals. You know, first stage and then followed by second stage. And now I believe they're going for the third stage. So the video of this project is freely available on YouTube. And if one watches it, one really gets a feel of how complex these structures are, you know. And I hope by seeing that, some people get charged to, you know, explore further.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the next question is what opportunity exists for engineers in India to receive training specifically in the maritime structural design?
So as we spoke earlier, the scope is very limited. Some companies do have their own internal training. But what I find in general office environment is the ongoing projects takes the priority. Okay. So once somehow one has to deliver, whether one is fully trained or partially trained or not trained at all. One is assigned the task and one has to do it. The best training, if the training modules are well structured, then it's fine. But I feel the best training is done when in your own time, when you're not in the office environment, you are not that stressed where you could make a mistake. And you learn outside of the office hours in your own time. And then you are able to implement better during the office hours because you are not learning on the job, literally. I mean, everybody learns on the job. I'm not saying they don't. While doing everything, you do learn a bit. But if you are sitting here in the middle of a tight schedule, trying to learn the theory behind certain things, so I don't think we have room for that. The schedules will not allow. So that's the case for having external training, in my view. So many times it depends who your immediate supervisor is, whether he himself is well trained, number one. If trained, is he having a mindset to impart? If he does have the mindset to impart, is he capable of imparting? Not everybody can convey to others in the same manner. So all these factors are there. So what we are looking for is a structured training, it's taken out of various experiences along the way and trying to give it in a structured manner that maybe in 2 or 3 modules, each module building on the previous module. So it can be treated as standalone modules, but the true value of the course would be if one does all the successive modules,
right,
building on the previous one.
Right. Okay, now let me go through the questions or queries which we have received through the registration form. And firstly, we will quickly discuss about the queries which are pertaining to the career path. So I'll quickly touch upon the few questions and then you can respond to the same. So just let me write out. So Vrushali is saying that, of course, there is some duplication, but let's say if you can add certain value to the questions, that would be great. That what career pathways or specializations are available within maritime structural design. So that we have discussed. Gaurav is saying that career growth after 5 to 6 years in India and abroad. So which would be better whether to stay in India or abroad with reference to maritime structures?
Well, to me, staying in India or abroad for any type of engineering is a very personal choice, depends on family commitment, your own ambition level and all that. So definitely abroad also you have plenty of chances. Plenty of chances are there. And if you choose to stay in India also, the Indian industry is booming. The ports are developing. A lot of industries are setting up their own captive facilities. So why, we can only take a indicator from the fact that many of these infrastructure European companies are setting up office in India. So if you choose to remain in India, you may still be working on foreign projects.
Yes.
Okay. Some people do not want to leave India, but they want to go abroad and work on short assignments.
Right.
So for them, this kind of situation is ideal. So there's plenty of scope going forward.
Justin Joseph is asking that being experienced in steel building structures, how is my future in converting to oil and gas field? And will my steel design background will help me? Is it worth?
Yeah. So as I said earlier, whatever you learned till now in structural engineering is never a waste. You are going to build on that foundation. I mean, figuratively, not literally. So, for example, I think you have an ongoing pipe rack course.
Yes,
so anybody who has done a steel structure, maybe in some other industry, maybe metal handling or coal handling or alumina, and he wants to go to oil and gas, he will find the transition very easy because the steel design is already done. Okay, it's just that he has to familiarize himself with the pipe loading, different type of piping which is there in an oil gas, which may be different from a power plant, for example. But as far as the structural engineer is concerned, the arrangement of the structure, the interplay of the forces, everything is similar. He can build on the previous experience. So this is not a compartmentalized thing that once you did something, you move into another industry. The previous industry experience is gone. No, I don't think so at all.
Yes.
So he need not worry on that scope.
Yes, fundamental remains the same, right?
Yeah.
Okay, PV Gavaraju is saying that for working in maritime structures, is any certification available so that an engineer working in onshore structures can get a chance in maritime design, though he is not having experience in the maritime structural design?
Well, see, if you're talking about maritime structural, then one has to enroll in a master's degree if you want a proper formal degree in that area. But then again, after 5 years, are you in a mood to write GATE and then enter into a master's pipeline, put a break on your job? So it's much better learning in parallel, in my opinion. Yes, it takes a bit of effort because you need more time. You have to have your office work done on time, and you also have to spend time on this. Regarding formal certification, yes, I think any training program done by a reputed portal should, have no issues in giving a formal certificate to the participants.
Yes.
So, to that extent, but if he is thinking of a proper institution, then he is talking of very handful of institutions which he has to put a break on his career and then join those institutions for a formal master's degree. I am not aware of a bachelor's degree in maritime. I've heard of an offshore bachelor's degree in Indonesia.
Okay.
They have planned a 4-year course in offshore structures.
Okay.
With a lot of internship, lot of software implementation. So by the time they are coming into the industry, they are more industry ready than someone who's coming from conventional studies. But I don't think we have that in India. We may have. I remember IIT Madras used to have a combined course of ocean engineering and naval architecture. I'm not too sure if they have it now, but then the product which the student who comes out is a combination of naval plus ocean. So not necessarily maritime. Maritime to a master's degree in NIT Surat, if I'm not mistaken. So we are talking a very, very handful of institutes. So if one can leave everything and go there, fine. That's one option, certainly. Or if you are very young, you could plan a master's abroad. That is possible. But those of you are in the 5 to 10 year experience category, it's much better to learn side by side while being employed.
Right.
Yeah.
Elan is from West Indies. He's asking this question that what are the design standards, codes, and practice documents which are used in maritime practice? And second question is asking, can you give practical tips for managing yourself so that you deliver services uh, in your daily projects,
Okay,
daily
I think
engineering practice?
I think this question is quite generalized, not necessarily about maritime. But talking of codes, I think the most exhaustive code, as somebody who's outside India, I think he should be aware of BS 6349. This is the Maritime Structures Code of UK. It's a very exhaustive code in 6 or 7 parts. Very exhaustive. The codes are, they will read like research, technical papers more than codes. So it's a very, very in-depth kind of this thing. Code. Indian codes for Indian listeners, we have a series called IS 4651 for the design of maritime structures. And but by far the most exhaustive code which has universal appeal and international application is the BS code. And regarding his last part of his question, one of the things which I found personally useful is to have your own technical library personalized. He talked about how to improve yourself. This is particularly so in the field of offshore and maritime, because anybody who has done the onshore conventional course and come out will have a lot of his textbooks. So if he has any doubt, he can always go back to that. And I'm not saying textbooks are exactly replicated in office. Office, you have to have a little more practical consideration. But still, there is something to fall back on. Right. But in the offshore and maritime, the number of books, really good books, are fewer than onshore. So one, it's useful to build a personal technical library as you go along the way. So when we were young, there was no PDF and all those things. So we were spending our own money on photocopy. So now, of course, digital, facilities available. You can have a whole almirah books condensed in one drive. So, of course, one should not just be collecting books, one should find time to read also.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
yes.
But you will find a lot of examples during work which are not really textbook. They are out of the ordinary. So maybe it's useful to note it down and keep reference for future.
Suresh Kumar is asking interesting question that how about the career opportunity in the maritime engineering? Then sea is having a miracle hidden stories. Still eager to know how sea is holds our civil structures.
Yes. That's one of the most challenging or rather satisfying things about doing a maritime structure or an offshore structure is that your sea is if suppose we design a offshore or a maritime facility in east coast of India, you are annually getting a cyclone there, annually, without fail. And every time they change the name of the cyclone, without fail. Unlike Arabian Sea is, there are cyclones, but they are rare. But Bay of Bengal is particularly turbulent area. So, and when your structure withstands that, cyclone, and then has been going on withstanding for several years, then there is a very, strong sense of satisfaction which you get.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
One of the structures which we did also stood up to the tsunami. Actually, when we designed the structure, it was pre-tsunami. The tsunami struck after a fortnight of the structure being completed. And then after that, we had no news from the site, or communications had broken down. Then we came to know that apart from some pipeline, the transition point from the marine facility onto the onshore, some minor scouring, the buried pipeline had occurred, but otherwise on the structure, there was not even a scratch. So these are all very satisfying moments where you actually challenge the sea.
Right.
And you overcome it. So there's a thrill in that. One of the beauty of structural engineering, personally, I felt is, you could say an electronics engineer maybe designing the latest chip, but that goes inside your cell phone and you don't know where it is and you're not able to physically appreciate it. But a structure you can physically appreciate.
Yes.
Okay, I did this, it's standing for so many years. So that kind of feeling which you get is, I think, unique.
Yes. Yes. Raghav Sharma is asking that I am fresher for this field. I am having bachelor degree. Now, should I need to go for masters or simply I can join maybe certain kind of course, or let's say, okay, so his question is, should I need to go for masters or simply I can join after some hands-on experience?
Okay, so if he is having a good gate score to get into those top colleges which I just mentioned, he can do a master's, no problem with that. Otherwise, if he's not able to get admission into that, then he is just like 90% of the engineers who are coming with the traditional civil or structural background and then trying to convert. But end of the day, he has to join a company which is interested in doing maritime structures.
Right, right.
So he has to apply for those companies and try to be an employee there and then build his experience. Being a fresher is not a negative, it's an advantage because your mind is fresh and you are able to absorb newer things faster.
Yeah. Next question is from Samuel. He's from Ethiopia. He says that what opportunities exist for engineers in Ethiopia to receive training in maritime structural design?
Well, once we are talking of the post-pandemic, the internet, ed tech has boomed, and whether you're in Ethiopia or any other country doesn't matter anymore. You can register and log in to a course which may be other corner of the world. Doesn't matter. I do not know about the specifics of Ethiopia. I will not be the right person to advise what is available in Ethiopia, but I don't think that's a constraint at all in today's network age. You simply, if you're on LinkedIn or any such platform, you do come to know of courses which are being run by people very far from your home country.
Right.
That's not a constraint at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, and let's say if everything goes right and if we launch the paid online courses for maritime structural design, then international participants will be also welcome to join the course.
Yes, yes, because the course which we plan will not be strictly, it will be deriving the best from all codes, So it's not that we'll be concentrating only on the BS code or only on the Indian code. Sometimes we have to mix and match, right? So you will get an international flavor in the course. You will get the American code, you will get the BS code, you will get the Indian code. You can compare and contrast. Take the best. Sometimes some codes are silent on certain clauses.
Yes.
So what do? Then you have to find it from some other code or reference. Even if you don't get anything in the code, we may have professional references or technical papers presented in conferences. So one must also have an eye on such. When I spoke of the digital library earlier, should also have a collection of technical papers and sort of arrange them in a structured manner so you can retrieve them. No point copying and keeping them and, name them correctly so that you can retrieve later on.
Yeah. Next question is from Anand Tupe. He's asking, how can someone switch from onshore experience to offshore?
Yeah, so again, like I said, one has to be in the right place at the right time. So if he is really keen about offshore or maritime, he has to move into an organization which is in that business. Because being interested in a maritime or offshore and even learning it, studying it, spending time on it, and not being able to implement it will be of no use. So one has to, if the industry really grabs you, if this is of real interest, and you really want to change the track and get into this, then you have to align your career path and try to send in your resume to those companies.
Yes.
Who will hire you on your current experience, no doubt. But once you are in there, you will be able to branch out.
Yes.
Yeah, and embrace the opportunity which the company gives.
Yes. Fatima is just informing through the registration form that I am master's in structural engineering and interested to change into the marine field. Okay. Dr. Priya Darshini is saying that would like to learn more about their analysis and design.
Yeah, so we will be in our course, forthcoming course, we will be covering analysis and design. So if you're really interested, I think Bhavin will shortly be coming out with the details and the schedule and all those contents, etc. So please do join in, and I'm sure it'll be beneficial if you're interested.
Yes. Dharmik Rathod is asking about brief introduction about maritime structures. Already we have covered that. Sarmishta is saying that what career pathways or specializations are available within maritime structural design? Would you like to add something to this question? So what career pathways or specializations available within maritime structural design? So are there different verticals even within maritime structural design? I think that is the question.
Okay, let me just add here one point. There is also one specialization called coastal engineering. Okay, so while this is not purely structural, but this deals with how the ocean interacts with the shoreline. So, for example, along Marine Drive in Mumbai, you have the tetrapods. That is a part of, is the outcome of coastal engineering, how to protect the shore against flooding, against tsunami. So
Yes.
that is not structural engineering, but a structural engineer needs to be aware of certain things. The coastal engineer. You know, he'll have to draw on structural engineering, geotechnical engineering, coastal engineering, ocean engineering, all of these, and then you get the final product. So, but it won't be structural engineering pure. It is more about knowing the ocean.
Yes.
And how it interacts with the coastline.
Yes. Okay. Altaf is asking whether structural engineer in maritime field is only designing or they are also involved. Sorry, he is asking. Okay, let me read this question again. Okay, Altaf is asking that what all things a structural engineer deal within maritime structures? Only analysis or they deal with the design also?
I think analysis on its own would be not giving any product unless you design and convert into a construction drawing, is it not? So yes, this is two sides of the same coin, according to.
Ramakrishnan, as he's saying that where I can study the maritime course. Now we already touched upon that point.
Yeah.
Abrar is saying that how can one change his career as a structural designer, designing conventional RCC and steel structures to designing maritime structures? So we have touched upon this point.
So what I'd like to add, Bhavin, here is the knowledge of both concrete and structural steel design will come in handy here.
Right.
So this generally in the maritime structures, the pile could be of concrete, but is often in steel, often steel. But the top sides are generally in reinforced concrete.
Yes.
So they could be thick pile caps or even 2 meter deep. So again, I'm reiterating whatever you learned in the initial stages, concrete, steel, combination of the two, is not a waste. It is going to be useful in maritime also.
Okay, Vigneshwaran is asking, I missed my opportunity to get into a structural design company in my undergraduate degree. Now I am preparing for GATE to get opportunity back by doing masters. Is it good way of approach?
I'm not too sure what he's currently doing.
Yeah, he is not specified. So he can connect with us separately, then we can comment. Kumavat is saying that how to utilize our existing knowledge. Again, it's the same point about industrial structural design, considerations into maritime structures. And what's the additional modification or any new learning have to be added, and also some company's name where I can learn and earn simultaneously.
Well, I don't think it would be the right platform to promote any specific company.
Yeah.
But the hint is a lot of European companies in the maritime business have
Mm.
opened office in India.
Yes.
This, information on this is easily available on the internet. One
Mm.
has to sit down, one can find.
Mm.
And most of them are in Mumbai and southern side.
Mhm. Yeah, Junaid is saying that what are the key study areas that we need to focus when we want to do transition of career from the maritime or let's say in the offshore. But let's focus on the maritime. What will be the focus area?
Yeah, the key area is understanding the marine environment and the marine loading. That is
Mm.
essential. What because we don't have that background earlier,
Mm. Mm.
and thinking of it as a new load case. Uh, those who are fresh engineers, they think in terms of software. Okay, I need so many basic load cases and load combinations. Think of it as another load case which you have to handle, and then a new set of load combinations
Yes,
suitable for the marine environment.
right,
So the key change is the marine environment.
right. Sayed is asking that how can I switch my careers to design? I have experience of QA, QC engineer and site execution. How your training program will be helpful?
Mm, I do not know how long he has been in QA/QC,
Hmm.
but if he's been, say, anywhere between 0 to 5 and he has a real desire to switch tracks, he can still do it.
Hmm.
However, if we spend longer, something like 15 years, it may be a little difficult to go back. One may have forgotten a lot of the basics itself.
Yes.
Really depends at what is his experience level? Is it mentioned?
He has not mentioned the experience level. Just let me find out if I can get it right. Yeah, his experience level is 2.5 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so he can definitely make the transition.
Hmm. So the question is repeating that how we can switch career from onshore to the marine structures. It is repeating everywhere, every time.
The main thing I have to say that it is possible because it has been done uh, many times over. There
Yes.
was no choice in India but to transition.
Yes.
To start, input is a normal or conventional structural engineer, and
Hmm.
through on-the-job training or structure training, whatever the product is, the marine structural engineer.
Mhm.
So it's not that we are trying some new experiment.
Yes.
Happened and it is successful.
Yes. Shishira is asking that how is maritime or offshore structural engineering different from onshore structural engineering? We have already covered this. Okay, Tariq has said that he is interested with marine structures, new construction, rehabilitations. There are multiple questions related to design, like what measures to be taken in design of marine structures, then design of jetty structure, retaining structure of jetty, then let's say how the design and construction of for foundation of maritime structures will be done, steel connections, or how corrosion can be controlled or should be taken care. And likewise, there are plenty of questions which we've received in the registration form.
Yes, all this we will be covering in our course. We will certainly have a module on construction aspects also,
Hmm.
because this is an area when, while designing, you have to be very conscious about how it will be constructed. In fact,
Yes.
sometimes the design is more about the construction phase.
Hmm.
It's far more strongly intertwined than onshore. So onshore, you have a beam and column, you pour the concrete, and you have a certain sequence. But
Hmm.
as I spoke earlier, in maritime, you have to have very judicious use of precast concrete.
Yes.
So maybe a bottom layer of, a beam can be cast in a U shape, which will be in concrete with rebar sticking out, and then you are pouring, fresh concrete into that U-shaped, cavity. So So during the wet concrete stage, it is acting as a formwork for the cast in situ. And when the concrete sets, it becomes one combined beam. So that's an example of how you have to keep the construction sequence in mind while designing.
Yes. Yes. If we study
the grade of concrete, normally what one encounters in onshore, the grade of concrete will suddenly jump up to M30, 35, 40 because of the aggressive environment. The cement content water ratio. Even we have used epoxy coated rebar because in certain states during the 90s and early 2000s it was mandatory in the state of Maharashtra and Gujarat to use epoxy coated rebar. But then while the corrosion aspect improves, the bond strength reduces. So you need extra lap length, anchorage, all those things. So a structural engineer has to be very mindful of the choice of materials. Which cement to use? It's not OPC. Normally we use Portland slag cement.
Yes.
Because it's denser. So those kind of things come into play.
Right. Right. Okay, if we analyze the next category of questions, then those questions are related to offshore structural design.
Yeah, so offshore is a different category altogether. Except for Norway and some structures, Australia or the west coast of Australia, offshore structures are always steel. Except these two countries, you have what is called gravity structures, concrete offshore structures. But those have, like the dinosaur, it has gone back into history. Now, if you have watched, people have watched the movie Deepwater Horizon. So that's a semi-submersible. So it is a structure which is not fixed to the seabed. It is fixed through a chain, not through a mooring chain, not through a structure. So as the depth increases, the challenge, the innovativeness increases. So what you can have on a fixed offshore platform, there's a limitation. 400 or 450 meters is the tallest platform which has been built in history. So what happens if we have oil reserve or gas reserve in 3,000 meters? Then we transfer all this facility onto a ship and make a floating production.
Yes.
So it gets more and more complex. India never had deep sea facilities. Past 5 to 8 years, we have had East Coast tremendous development. The reason is the water depths there. If you go out 60 or 80 meters, you are in 1,000 meters of water.
Yes.
As in the west coast, you go out 200 kilometers, you're only in 70 meters. The coast, the continental shelf has a very shallow gradient. So in the west coast, we have fixed platforms. But if you go to any of these platforms, you cannot see land at all. So it's truly offshore.
Yes.
Off the shore. But the maritime is on the shore or in the vicinity of the shore.
Right. 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 Yeah, thanks a lot, Mathew ji. And I think this discussion would be helpful to the participants to understand about what are the opportunities available in the maritime structural design. It would be also helpful for them, let's say, if they want to switch their career from their conventional projects to this very niche area, right?
Yeah, I think from my side, I can say that the content of whatever the forthcoming series will be very engaging and very informative. And will open up a lot of these, or clarify a lot of these doubts which people have had. And, including design aspects, loading, detailing, construction, foundations. It will deal with everything. So it will be structured. Then I think we're also planning for interactive sessions where we can actually go into the depth of specific, design examples. Not just, we'll have the theory, of course, but we will also have interactive sessions.
Yeah. So we will add exercises, right? Exercise problems, which they can work, right?
Right. So that will give them a feel of how things are done in the design office. And hopefully it will help them in their transition.
Right.
Or even for the engineers who are already in this sector, I don't want to exclude them from the discussion. It would be a very good refresher course for such people.
Yeah.
Because suppose somebody is working in the port, a port is not just about design, it's about a whole lot of other functions, logistics, when you get the cargo, whether the cargo is correct, how to send it inland. There's so many responsibilities of that individual. But maybe he or she is actually interested in the design part, would like to refresh. So this course would be useful to such people also.
Yes, yes.
Not just the ones who are fresh or looking for a transition. It could be a refresher also.
Yes, yes. Right. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Bhavin, again for this opportunity. And I hope by this medium we'll be able to connect with a lot of people who have shown interest.
Yes.
And we look forward to their participation in the forthcoming series.
Yeah. So we have tried or we have attempted to give answers, whatever you received through the registration form. Of course, because of the time constraint, we could not discuss about all the questions. But let's say if something is missed out, feel free to write down in the comment box below. We'll collate those questions and then again, we will connect separately with the individual participants as and when time permits. Right? So thank you all. We are closing this session now. Goodbye.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.